Hey guys, Budcat7 here. Okay, it is Friday, June 21st, 2024, and I'd like to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research 2 channel here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. Thank you, and please do hit the like button and subscribe if you're not a subscriber. We cover some very interesting topics on this channel. Okay guys, well, in this video I want to cover an article from 2018 that basically was a DNA study about the various, I suppose, elongated skulls that were found in Germany, various parts of Germany, I guess. And although in these articles it doesn't specify any particular archaeological dig, although they refer to one in particular that we don't know anything about, like when it was done, and when it was unearthed, when the archaeology took place. We don't know anything about it because they don't tell us about it. But this DNA study basically was directed towards the various elongated skulls found in Germany, and of course these articles that are released and put on these online magazines, whatever it might be, released by universities, other organizations, whatever they might be, the data that was produced by it. So you get sort of a scaled down, truncated version of it. It takes, the most important, points that were made from the research and they publish in what I call basically would be science tabloid, article, where you get very little information, things are omitted, they've come to some conclusions or whatever it is, but some people are in disagreement. So apparently, although this was done in 2018, you don't hear anything more about it. But what are all these elongated skulls doing around, Germany, buried alongside, normal, regular, what we consider, normal, regular people, blonde-eyed, blue-eyed people, because of, apparently what they found in these, genetic studies, whatever they might have been. So, do you think that, should I be like the rest of the YouTubers who present these sort of tabloid science pieces released on Science Magazine or, National Geographic or, Smithsonian, whatever it might be, and just, it's a short piece and it, just gives you sort of general information about it, and, you're sort of left saying, interesting, they solved this, they understand that, whatever it might be. And is that what it really is? I mean, so many times I've read these kind of articles on my other channel, this channel, Stonewall Research channel. This is my 2 channel here. But on my original channel here, I read so many pieces about this, and you could be just torn apart because they omit so much stuff and don't explain a lot of stuff, and what their conclusions are, are they definite, and what's been solved. I did one on Roman concrete, they solved it, but when you read in the article further down, is they didn't solve it because they can't figure out. They got all the they discovered all the components, all the different, materials that you needed to mix together to make Roman concrete. And whatever they do, they can't seem to get the process right. See, that was what was left out. They couldn't make the Roman concrete because they don't know what the process is. There's something missing from the process. So, did they solve it? Of course they didn't solve it. So it's all these things are ridiculous, sensationalized, science tabloid pieces. And is that what you want me to read here, or should we make a nice short video about it and you could just agree with everything on there, I suppose, But are there dissenting voices? It says it in the article. So who are these people, who don't agree with these things? So in any case, I just found it interesting, on the face of it, they found all these elongated skulls in Germany. Well, what are they doing there? Who are these people? What are they trying to say about him? Besides getting a lot of stuff all wrong to begin with, as I and Brian Foster know, no matter how much you deform a skull, you can't increase the capacity, the internal capacity of the brain tissue that's in there. If I take your head right now and deform it, which must hurt, and from like Ben Casey, the brain is swollen, it's pushing against the skull. This is not a good thing. I mean, why are these people doing this to begin with at all? And, are they, as many people have sort of supposed, are they trying to emulate, something, some people that they, admired in the past or whatever, okay? So the real elongated skulls, the ones that they don't have the cranial sutures, they explain everything now, they have to. Their bosses tell them to, hey, you better explain this stuff. Whatever cockamamie story you make up, we'll back you up. Don't worry about it. We'll peer review it. I play golf with these other professors at other universities. Don't worry about it. So, what are they trying to say? What are the dissenting voices trying to say? That's what I really want to know. Do you want to hear the tabloid science piece only? And be like, all right, now I know something about it. They solved this and they solved that, and they didn't solve anything. Okay? As long as there's dissenting voices and some pretty powerful ones, from what I understand, there was this Israeli anthropologist or archaeologist, this guy who's an anthropologist or skeletal paleontologist or whatever it might be. This is what he specializes in, and his quote was, "I'm not buying it." Okay, so apparently something else is going on, and anybody who knows me and my research and everything knows what I think about it, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's get to this tabloid article here so you can hear it. Okay, this is in Science Alert. So, Science Alert. Okay, so the mystery of bizarre elongated skulls found in Germany could finally be solved. But get the language. Always get the language, okay? Could finally be solved. It's not solved yet, but it could be. Maybe. Okay, so here are some of these skulls, some of them very pronounced. Again, we measuring the internal capacity of these skulls. Are they exceeding, normal skull capacity? Why would that be? And we're all one species, right? Why are people all different sizes and shapes and cranial capacities, more and less, and all this kind of stuff like that? That doesn't happen in other animal species, all right? So if there's other animal similar species that are, almost identical in every way, that are bigger or smaller, well, they call them subspecies, but you're going to hear people in the politically correct platform being like, who are you calling sub? How dare you call me sub anything? It's just, you're not allowed to say subspecies, I guess, whatever. There isn't one, because it's just us, and we're just deforming our skulls for no particular reason, and God only knows what we're doing to our brains inside. So, they discuss a little bit of this at the end of this article, which I find very interesting, because I was always wondering, like, doesn't this hurt the brain? Why are you doing this? Okay, so when it does occur artificially, and the tribes that have been known to do this or whatever, what are they doing to themselves over there? When the people we're talking about here, the elongated skull people, could have natural elongated skulls, so they weren't binding anything. That's the way it grew, and that was it. But okay, so for 1,500 years, they lay buried among the relics of medieval Germany, the remains of women irreconcilably different to the skeletons around them, courtesy of their towering, elongated skulls. Towering. In fact, the legacy of artificial cranial deformation across human history is so abnormal and other It's sometimes presented as evidence of extraterrestrial life. Okay, they go down, all these other rabbit holes here to further confuse you about what's going on because they don't know themselves. It's a whole made up story. I know what the story is, and I'll swear on my life by it based on my own research. Okay, but they don't know what they're talking about because they're not making any connections here. And why, I don't know, but I can present what evidence I have for you. However circumstantial, is more relevant to understanding what's going on. But okay, so a new genetic analysis reveals otherwise, but also sheds light on cultural practices so distant and forgotten they're almost alien. If not for their misshapen skulls, these otherwise unremarkable skeletons, so they're unremarkable, they're not going to give us the size, like the heights of these people. And I remember Brian Forster, I asked him directly on one of his live, feeds there going on, live videos, and in the comments, I was, I'm always pestering him. I was pestering him for a while, but, I like him, but, it was like, come on now. So, he said to me that the elongated skull Paracas mummies were taller than average, height. It would be considered today when people in the past were so much smaller as, by people who research height and growth history. So, how that happened, but how are they getting more increased internal cranial capacity? How is that happening? It's not going to happen if I take your regular skull and misshapen it right now and crush it all off, which I'm sure is going to hurt, and do that to you for some reason. Okay, they're not going to increase the capacity, internal capacity. It's just going to be a different shape, that's all. And if it grows longer, it's got to be all bone, and it's not. So, in any case, if not for their misshapen skulls, these otherwise unremarkable skeletons discovered by researchers in Bavaria during the 20th century. Okay, so this discovered by researchers in Bavaria during the 20th century might never have been noticed by scientists. Okay, so he's a particularly big, found in the 20th century sometime, whenever it was. Do we know? Okay, so archaeologically, they are not that different from the rest of the population. Okay, so you're going to minimize it. Okay. Geneticist Joachim Berger from the University of Mainz explained to National Geographic, genetically they are totally different. So they're totally different genetically. Here's one of them here. Maybe increased brain capacity somehow. Berger and fellow researchers sequenced the genomes of almost 40 individuals buried in South Germany, dating from the late 5th to early 6th century. Of these, 9 were women showing clear signs of skull deformation, while 5 others bore the marks of intermediate elongation. So, just like in between, I guess. How long does it take? A whole lifetime? You keep binding them up all the time and squishing up your brain and everything? I don't think so. But, okay. So, the remaining individuals showed no signs of the practice. Even though they lived and died alongside the ancient Bavarians who had blue eyes and blonde hair, the genes revealed that these women with deformed skulls came from somewhere else entirely. Our data points to barbarian tribes in Western and Central Europe, specifically acquiring exotic-looking women with elongated heads born elsewhere, explains genomicist Krishna Veerarama from Stony Brook University in a press release. And Stony Brook University is right here on Long Island where I'm at, on the North Shore here, probably like 30 miles away, 50 by road, but okay, so That's what she's saying here. In particular, the genomes provide a match for southeastern Europe, specifically Bulgaria and Romania, meaning these women would have likely had darker hair and darker eyes than their barbarian associates, not to mention their expansive receding foreheads. Okay, so they say they come from Bulgaria and Romania, but there's a reason why Romania was called what it was. It's a sort of compilation of people there, a conglomeration of people there. But anyway, we'll get to that later. Another one of these elongated skulls, maybe just one of these intermediate ones, or, I don't know, but that's what they say. Where's the sutures on this one here? Just barely see them over here. But they explain all that too. They explain everything away, no matter however ridiculous it might seem or scant explanation there is. That's what the genetic analysis can tell us about these long ago people. But how did these women end up in medieval Bavaria, and why were their heads warped like this? So they're warped, see? There could be no other people with other kinds of skull types or shapes or anything. No, that couldn't be. Everybody has to be like us, right? Because we're one species or whatever, but, that only applies to certain things, not height and other things or whatever, just they got lots of explanations that seem like no explanations at all. When you look at the animal world, it can't possibly be. It doesn't work that way in the animal world, okay? Everything is in relative same size. The team speculates the women had their supple heads bound as infants in order to protect... Now, get the wording. Speculates the women had their supple heads bound as infants in order to produce the distinctive elongated look, a cultural practice carried out in other parts of the world over the course of history, including elsewhere in Europe and Asia. And in the Americas as well, right? Paracas, blah, 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 remember that? Okay. As for how they ended up buried in Bavaria, the researchers suggest it's likely the women with elongated skulls came from wealthy or distinguished families in southeastern Europe and may have been betrothed to men in local Bavarian communities to help form political or strategic alliances in the region. Okay, so here's where I got something to say about this, all right? So maybe what they're discovering, and it wouldn't comport with their notion about the Bell Beaker people who were there, who we know all about, were not, here are people with also deformed skulls, but these weren't created by artificial cranial deformation. These are the brachycephalic ones that occur naturally, right, with the Bell Beaker people. And what were the Bell Beaker people? Their physical anthropology, okay? Historical craniometric studies found that the Beaker people appeared to be of a different physical type than those earlier populations in the same geographic areas. They were described as tall, heavy-boned, and brachycephalic, okay? Naturally occurring, odd-shaped, deformed skulls, okay? In contrast to what they claim is artificial cranial deformation because of these conical shapes, these elongated shapes. That's not brachycephalic, you see. So that's more like dolichocephalic. So, whereas that can be explained, this would be occurring naturally. And are there other types that we know about? Well, what about the Bosco man? Okay, we know all about that. This would be like the opposite of the type of artificial cranial deformation that they're talking about by, cradle boarding and wrapping of the head. They don't know, you see, to speculate about everything. So this is no speculation here. They talk about the cranial capacity here and about how intelligent these people would be. 1,700 and 2,000 centimeters, cube centimeters or whatever. So, all right, so that's quite a bit more than average today, okay? So, and this is what they look like, even though they claim that this is a hydrocephalic skull, often falsely presented as a Boscapoid skull. Okay, here's what Budcat7 says. Okay, some of these things are being expressed in people at later times, and they're claiming that they're diseases of some sort. Okay, like gigantism and acromegaly in some people, and how these DNA combinations and hybrids are expressing themselves, and to one degree greater or another. But these pop out and they say, "Oh, something's wrong with this person." Obviously, it's so it got to be something wrong with them, because everybody should look just like us. We have our own particular bias. Okay, when there's proof otherwise. So you see, this is falsely presented here, but when you hear the description of the skulls, it's like a light bulb head. Okay, so how'd they do that? Would they strap something to the head that pulled the skull in even directions all around to create a round, expanded skull? How'd they do that? Would they have like, how they do with unibody work when they repair your car, and they pull it all out with these steel cables at different angles and stuff to get it all back to its original position again. That's how they did that, is the opposite of it. Who says there aren't all these other skull types from the past, unusual, that were naturally occurring? You're not going to talk about any of that, see, because it can't possibly be, right? See, when it comes to the elongated skull, see, these are all naturally occurring, but they can't explain that either, right? We're all one species. Where'd they come from? Where'd their history go? And as far as the Bell Beaker people go, okay, so they're tall, heavy boned, and brachiocephalus. Nobody like that today, right? The giant, none of the giants ever survived, and there's no such thing, and all these naysayers and blah, blah, blah. Let's hear a little about what the AI says about the Frisian people here. Okay. What are the Frisians known for? Okay, let me read that to you. Okay, you might be interested in hearing about this. The Frisians are a group of people of northwestern Europe living in an area known as Frisia. They are mainly in the Dutch areas of Friesland and Groningen and in Germany, East Frisia and North Frisia. They are said to be tall, big-boned, and light-haired people with a rich history and folklore. And something they're leaving out, they got weird skull shapes too. See? No, none of the giants survived. No, it's impossible. We're the same species, but all different sizes. No schools of fish, no flocks of birds, no herds of cattle, no herds of zebra, no prides of lions. All within relative same size. No big, giant, huge one like the size of an elephant, like a lion, and one like a midget. That doesn't happen. Okay? But it happens with us. Why? We're animals too, according to them and everything else, right? So why not? What's the problem? We're all the same species. Bullshit. They're not saying subspecies. How dare you call me sub? You sub, you. So, in any case, you know what my feelings are about this. And first of all, we're talking about what is the same time period roughly as the Adena and Hopewell, which is the University of Indiana. Be happy to tell you about how they were contemporaries, with the Adena being the ruling class over the normal sized human types like us, okay, who were the Hopewell. That was going on around that time, right? And also, hey, what about the Watusi people? I showed you on my other channel here, my Stonewall channel here, okay, in the 1939 travel film, to tell you all about the Watusi people and how they're the ruling class over their subjects, the Tutsi people, and they're all of normal size. But, hey, the giants didn't survive, and there's no such thing. It's just, it's normal for people in the same species to be 7 and 8 foot tall, no problem, and all of them, and being a ruling class and all kind of stuff. And what happened at the Brighton Winter Cave there? what is that, in Germany, Austria, place like that, that NATO is using for bombing area, live war games area. Yeah, I wonder why. I don't know. Maybe for the same reason Chris Leslie's website there has been taken down. Okay, so let me get back to this here. As for how they ended up buried in Bavaria, the researchers suggest it's likely the women with the elongated skulls. Okay, so we said that about these distinguished and wealthy families. Okay, you almost got it right. They're the ruling class at the time, even though it's 500 AD. That's long after the Bell Beaker people disappeared, supposedly, right? Just tell the Frisians that, they're not any remnant of the Bell Beaker people. No. Or somebody related to them, maybe they don't have the full vaulted cranium, but apparently, according to what I researched, there's all different kind of skull types walking around the past, including ones with horns. Where'd that come from? Okay, so if the hypothesis is correct, it could tell us more than just where these women and their elongated skulls came from, expanding what we know about history in this part of the world back then. Nobody thought of that marriage and kinship had a really important function in the period. Historical archaeologist Susan Hackenbeck from the University of Cambridge in the UK, who wasn't involved with the study, told National Geographic. Nobody thought that marriage and kinship had a really important function in the period. She's a historical archaeologist. She better read more history. But in any case, not everybody accepts the hypothesis. So I got to mention this. Not everybody does, including some big shots don't. And it will take a lot more research to say for sure if the mystery of these elongated skulls can actually be explained by a bevy of brides traded to barbarians in Bavaria. As for the lives these women led with their towering alien-like heads, betrothed to unfamiliar men in land far from home, we may never know the details, but hopefully they were good lives, not married by their privileged deformity. There is a discussion going on whether the artificial cranial deformation causes cognitive deficiencies. One of the team, osteologist Michaela Harbeck, from the Bavarian State Collection for Anthropology and Paleoanatomy, explained to Haaretz. Okay, so here they're saying it. They're just telling you right here. This is, they have to include this because some bright person like me is going to say, well, what about that? Doesn't that hurt? And how's that affect the brain? If it doesn't occur naturally, all right, the brain is this electric, organ, that probably has a lot to do with its symmetry and all this kind of stuff, and, how it operates, and you're busy squishing it all up, and you can imagine these tribes of people who are doing that at later times to emulate these people from the past who were their ruling class, like the Watusi, except that they had these naturally occurring elongated skulls, so now they're mimicking them and hurting themselves, because they don't know anything about anatomy or science or whatever. I'm sure if those people where their previous rulers were still around, you're saying, what are you doing to yourself? So in any case, some studies say there were several pathological conditions associated with it, including bulging eyes, but this highly depends on the degree of the deformation. I would guess that our individuals which had only medium deformed skulls did not suffer from it. Okay, the findings are reported in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Okay, so that's the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They didn't finish it. Okay, it's the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America, okay? That's who's overseeing the release of this public information, okay? Remember that, okay? Where guys like C.W. Saran were trying to tell us in 1971 with his book, The First Americans, okay? This is the guy who who wrote the first book on archaeology, okay? The history of archaeology. Before this book came out in 1949, after World War II, all right, which was a highly praised book all around the world, regardless of the fact that Saram worked for the Nazi propaganda department, which they kicked him out of and put him on the front lines because he didn't want to cooperate. He didn't like what he was doing. He didn't like the Nazis, see? So in any case, this is the first book on archaeology ever. Okay, before you could only read in newspapers and magazines, articles about it or whatever. So he wrote the book in 71, the first American to bring to all of our attention about how archaeology in the Americas, especially North America, especially within the United States, under the directorship of Alice Hrdlicka and Holmes previously, and a couple of Hrdlicka's acolytes who followed him, working at the Smithsonian there, were trying to suppress archaeology in the Americas. So he figured he'd write a book to make sure that that didn't happen, see, about giant skeletal remains and elongated skulls and all that stuff is in there, right? Because Saram didn't want that to go suppressed, see? All right, so this is coming from, by edict of the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America. That's the rest of the title that they're leaving off, okay? All right, so let's take a look at this for a second, all right? Bodies in academia. This is his blog here. It says, bodies seeing, representing, and handling human remains, okay? So the article is shortly after the release of that other article was March 14th. This was released on the 16th, this blog, all right, about one of the dissenters, okay? And you might be interested to hear what he has to say, okay? I could just end this video right here and right now, and I could be just like all the rest of the retards on YouTube, okay? I'm going to give you this science tabloid piece that tells you nothing, that misinforms you, okay? Should I be like that and get zillions of views? Who are you paying attention to on YouTube, on other platforms or whatever? People who come across these science tabloid pieces and read them to you, and you're like, oh, wow, solved. But it's not solved. It's not even close to being solved, okay? So this article is by bodies in academia. It's probably somebody who doesn't want to put their name on it, from fear of being, ridiculed and scorned. Okay, so, but still brave enough, and probably somebody who really knows intimately the people he's talking about and may know him through some remote coincidence or something like that, but I doubt it. So, on the recent elongated barbarian skulls and their supposed Balkan origins, okay. Strange elongated skulls reveal medieval Bulgarian brides were traded for politics, reads a sciencemag.org headline. More conservative National Geographic captions the same news as pointy skulls belong to foreign brides, ancient DNA suggests. Both of these, along with many others, there's some typographical errors. I think this guy is Romanian, that's why. Translation here. Actually point, no pun intended, to a recent PNAS study in which genomic data from 41 graves from archaeological sites in present-day Bavaria and southern Germany, mostly dating to around 500 AD, was generated, okay? PNAS, the Proceedings from the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America, okay? There's a long history of propaganda and suppressing archaeological data. With Alice Hrdlicka, who ran the Department of over there in ethnology at the Smithsonian there for 40 years, who believed that no peoples got here to the Americas prior to 4,000 years ago. And he believed that. And he believed that all Native American peoples and people in the Americas, Native people in the Americas in general, were all subhuman. Okay? That's who's running it. That's who's setting the ground rules. Okay? For years and years and years. And it's still in there. Don't doubt it. Okay? It comes through whenever you read these articles. Okay? You can't admit to anything here. Right? I just showed you. Did these people survive to today? Of course they did. Tall, big bone, light-haired people with weird skulls in Frisia there who live today. If you go there and you're my height, 5'8", the bar's up to your neck. That's what it said in the travel article that I read on my other channel, a Christmas article about the Frisian people there. All right? The urinal's halfway up the wall. You have to stand on a milk crate to go to the bathroom. All right? All one species? What are you talking about? You think we're stupid? They think we're stupid because they don't have answers to everything. But see, that doesn't sell. You know, doesn't sell diplomas. You see, that's why they can never say we don't know shit. Nobody's going to go to school and learn from some professor who don't know shit. So they got to make up a story. All right? And this is what this guy is talking about. Among these skeletons, several display artificial skull deformation. The authors conclude that based on a comparison between the generated genomic profiles and modern reference population, quote, the most likely origin of the majority of these women displaying artificial skull deformation was southeastern Europe, resolving a debate that has lasted for more than half a century. But what debate are they alluding to? And is the genomic material the best, i.e. the most useful kind of evidence to settle it? Before delving further, I should just like to leave this in reference to the media captions of exotic Bulgarian and Romanian brides. I was also relieved that they did not go with the Romanian brides in the media headlines, because apparently this guy's Romanian. I'm part Romanian too. My great-grandmother came from the Transylvanian Alps, which is in Romania, okay, right next to Hungary there. We have Bucharest is the capital of Romania, and Budapest is the capital of Hungary, where my great-grandfather's family ran a coffee house in Budapest. And that's how my great-grandmother met my great-grandfather, like coming down out of the mountains there. She was a mountain person and came down and had some coffee at the coffee house in Budapest. So I got that Magyar in me, that crazy Magyar, you know, that anybody knows about the Magyars knows something about. Okay, so moving further, this PNAS study threw me back to my beginnings in anthropology. I was 20 years old and enthusiastic about learning the analysis of human remains. So I went to visit the Institute of Anthropology, Francis A. Rainer, in Bucharest, the capital of Romania. After climbing a semi-lit winding stair, the first thing one saw upon entering the main hall was a large old-fashioned display case of elongated, artificially deformed skulls discovered in Romania. They were exhibiting both the geographic spread of the phenomena and also the variety of styles. Interesting. Styles. And here's some of them. So as they say, a variety of artificial deformation styles. How they prove this, they don't know. I just read to you that they don't know how it was done. And forget about it when it comes to increased capacity. Okay? That can't possibly happen. Okay, unless it's occurring naturally, like the Boscopoids. How they do it? They use magnets to pull, their skull out and make it like a balloon, because that's the description of it. And I think on Chris Leslie's website that they took down, they showed actual pictures of it. And some, you read in that article there, somebody got upset at that. Oh, how dare you show that? Those people obviously suffered from some, genetic, problem, whatever, because everybody should look like us because we're the best. And wasn't it in the guy, the author there who studied the Denisovan people, the DNA researcher who did all the studies of the Denisovan and all the Asian people that has the trace of Denisovan DNA in them, the guy who did the study said that we're merely a subspecies ourselves. We're not like the original species, whatever that was. We're some kind of subspecies. An amalgamation of all different kinds of humanoids that lived in the past. That's what he said, the expert on that. Okay, so take it or leave it. I don't know what you want to do. Okay, according to Nicole Miritui, the Romanian specialist on these skulls, there are 61 places in Romania in which 155 deformed skulls have been discovered. Out of these, 130 are clearly confirmed as intentional artificial deformations. Of course they are clearly confirmed as that, because they have no other explanation. Don't measure the internal capacity, because now you're effed up. All right? And only 111 could be studied. Okay, so you can read more about it in a PhD thesis if you like, which I've read many PhD theses, even on my channel here, my other channel. Okay, so, go beyond those tabloid articles, Okay, so a significant number of these were kept at the Institute of Anthropology. After a first encounter with their strangeness, regardless of how much you have heard before, upon seeing them, the viewer gets drawn in, wondering about how it must have been to possess such a skull, and maybe even why would several cultures entertain this idea. These skulls became part of my daily life at the Institute. Interesting questions there. Okay, why would it? And what we all know today, what our image is, our perception of beauty, what our measure of beauty is, female, male, and you have all these magazines and fashion mags and swimsuit mags and muscle mags and all this kind of stuff like that. We were admiring people with elongated skulls. Well, again, they got it all wrong. Even this fella here, I'm sure, believes it. Okay. They were the ruling class there, just like they were elsewhere in the world. Okay. Just like the Adena and the Hopewell and the modern day 20th century Watusi people. You can't say that the social dynamic is different in any way. Why would it be? So you have examples in modern day times of people of exceptional height being the ruling class over normal sized average subjects. So what's hard to believe, okay? All right? And you have these things here that, oh, well, those are natural. We have odd skull shapes, but, no, how do you explain that? Oh, they obviously had a problem. See, this is what they do, is they put some sort of medical condition on whatever people that dig up the past that don't make any sense and claim that that's what it was, and it must have passed around to everybody. It must have been genetic or whatever it is. And they test them and they have the same genetics, but they can't figure out 100% of genetics anyway. There's so many different... Nobody has pure genetics on the planet. Just research it yourself. There's no person on the face of the earth right now that has some sort of pure genetics or whatever. Just an amalgamation of hundreds of different types of people from all over the place. They don't know how to do it. Comes from all... They take segments of it and try to figure that out. And that and the Frisian people, okay? Explain all that stuff to us. smallest king species of the tall, big bone people with the weird shaped skulls or light blonde hair and blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you guys make up your own minds about it, okay? I've been hawking this stuff and preaching it for a long time, and, you know, hey, I don't have millions of followers because I'm not doing a tabloid article and misinforming you, okay? But their presence there also brings back my mind the image of Dr. Miratoy, who is the head of the paleoanthropology department at the time, closing, retiring, a bearded man sitting quietly, pensive behind his desk, overrun by papers and bones, smoking and looking through his standard handwritten half-page notes, with the department's cat sitting next to him. And I guess there he is, looking at bones and stuff. I don't see the cat, though. We overlapped for a couple of years only, during which time we probably only exchanged a handful of words, and to this day I'm not sure what he thought of me. But my early time in the Institute also coincided with the demise of a certain kind of doing archaeology anthropology, embodied by several professors at the university as well. And encyclopedic knowledge of all material that is available out there, with detailed understanding of its inner workings. There were certain limitations to their interpretation, which later scholarship maybe overcame. But at the same time, regardless one talked about Roman pottery, deformed skulls, or Bronze Age metal swords, interpretation was a multivariate and grounded in material, always having at hand comparative contrasting examples from other geographic cultural contexts. Of course, this is not just the appanage of these older generations. Okay, so an appanage is sort of an archaic term, apparently. I had to figure it out. It's like the stipend or a gift that, you know, royalty, kings and queens and stuff give to their children, like land ownership, a title, or money to, you know, that was required for their, you know, quote unquote maintenance. So anyway, that's just an old word there. Okay, so, but when I hear the words the old school, it is them that I have in mind, very similar to Vera Gordon-Child's performance of the famous Animal, Vegetal, Mineral 1956 show. Well, this guy goes way back beyond me. I never even heard of that show, but maybe it's a show within this country there. Okay, some sort of science show. So getting back to the recent ADNA news on the elongated skulls, my further comments are written with this in mind: the milieu in which I have grown as a researcher. It is not my aim to discuss the genetic data per se, as that falls outside both my expertise and current focus, just its historical interpretation. At the same time, I do not have extensive knowledge on either the artificially deformed skulls or the migratory era. I am sure other colleagues of mine are better equipped to do that, including my Romanian colleagues. So I'm not trying to settle the debate myself, but simply to raise a couple of reflection points. And this migratory stuff is a big thing right now, okay, with all new discoveries and stuff, and it's leaving them dumbfounded, quite frankly, okay? Just like the migratory period of the Bell Beaker people with their weird skulls that are apparently naturally occurring, okay, big boned and all this stuff, you know. Just nobody has big bones like that, you know, and everybody, you know, born to somebody and whatnot, you know, it just doesn't occur. Not to the level that we're talking about. Just people are just anatomically different. All right. Okay, so at the same time, okay, so I'm sure other colleagues of mine are better equipped to do that, including my Romanian colleagues. So I'm not trying to settle the debate myself, but simply to raise a couple of reflection points. In short, I think this new PNAS study reads like an oversimplification of the discussion, interspersed with occasional anachronistic terminology. Okay? Here's somebody in the field, okay, a researcher himself, who has to remain anonymous for obvious reasons, okay, for his criticisms, all right, apparently. He doesn't want to be alienated, like people like Gladwin did from Arizona there when he dare say, hey, these people were a different body type and they were a different kind of people and they weren't really like Native Americans, and they're like, shut up, you jerk, what are you talking about, and shamed him into like sort of agreeing that, but he was bitter about it. He really was. And we got that from Saram's book. Talked about Harold S. Gladwin, who opened the first archaeological museum in Arizona, based on his archaeology there and everything else. And then, when he made some conclusions about it, they were like, shut up, you jerk. Some colleagues and other people, okay? We even went at a time when archaeology was in its nascency. You have all these experts that are all opinionated jerks. They have to follow along with Holmes and Herdlischka or else. You got it. By comparing genetic profiles of early medieval skeletons from Bavaria with contemporary populations, the authors claim to have finally identified the origin of these people. At the same time, they set up to answer the question whether the observed East Asian ancestry in both our late 5th, early 6th century Bavarian and Serbian samples is consistent with an assumed ultimate Hunnic origin of skull deformation in both Eastern and Western Europe, because it's all over the place. Okay, and then based on 2nd century discovery from Romania, Hunnic modified skulls, physical appearance, identity, and transformative nature of migration. See how the skull deformation and migration go along together. Otherwise, and what's the histories of these people? You only take it back so far, but how'd they get so tall? That was left out of the equation in this, too. They didn't want to talk about the height of these people because they can't explain it. Like they can't explain other people of unusual height. We're all the same species, that's why they can't explain it. Okay, so another guy concluded some other stuff. When coupled with the archaeological evidence of skull deformation in Romania as early as the 2nd century, it perhaps suggests any Hunnic or earlier Sarmatian-like influence in spreading the tradition of ACD, artificial cranial deformation, from the steppe may have been low, and their genetic impact even lower. Okay, so that's what those guys said. Okay, I agree that the topic they have chosen is an interesting one, and that can be useful to see if new methods can bring fresh light to old problems. However, the historical conclusion requires a more complex perspective, given the nature of the material at hand. To start with, okay, get this, okay, ethnicity is not written in bones. Okay, though the genetic profile might give you some haplogroups indications, their cultural expression is beyond its reach. The terms Hun, Sarmatian, Barbarian, etc. are first and foremost cultural identities, which might or might not overlap distinct genetic profiles. If we think otherwise, we get back to seeing the equation people equals skeletons equal pots. Okay, so this was a way that they use to identify certain peoples by their pottery and all kind of stuff, and it's too oversimplified way of identifying particular people, okay, with such varied expressions of these people or whatever. So that's like the oversimplified, and that was just going on everywhere in archaeology in 100 years ago, totally, up into even more modern times, into the into late 20th century, okay? But you have to give all that up, see, because it's more complex than that. Furthermore, if we think of the early 2nd to 3rd century skeletons with artificially deformed heads from Romania mentioned in the article, they have been interpreted as being of Sarmatian origin, though in some instances others have challenged this interpretation. But who exactly were these Nord-Pontic Sarmatians is still a matter of debate, and in the local arguments, researchers are mobilizing literary, epigraphic, numismatic, and archaeological evidence. So here's a relief of the Sarmatians helping Dacians during the First Dacian-Roman War. So they have sort of conical helmets on there. Trajans, as depicted on the Trajans column. Okay. Labeling ethnicity is always a tricky matter, especially in a period in which populations were in constant flux and new migratory waves coming into Europe. Thus, cultural practices of laying mirrors in women burials, certain types of weapons with men, the use of beads and amulets, traditional material cultural labeled as of Sarmatian influence, become part of wider arguments that include topics such as Roman trade networks, political organization, acculturation, craftsmanship, etc. In a patchy and mostly unclear historical landscape, the question of how were various groups interacting, how can one discriminate between them, and the way in which new forms of sociality and culture emerged in the process are the interesting and difficult questions to answer. Therefore, in this dense array of contradictory or fragmentary sources, a single data set point, e.g. a skeleton from 2nd century Romania, or one single method, ergo DNA testing, cannot unfortunately settle once and for all, quote unquote, such complex historical matters. Okay? All right? Get the straight dope on this stuff, all right? Not the tabloid science articles you can read anywhere and see anywhere on YouTube through all the goofballs who present them. Secondly, the term Romanian or Bulgarian are culturally connotated and historically circumscribed. The formation of the contemporary Romanian people is a long process involving the integration of Dacian, Roman, Slavic, and of other influences, and one can't use the term as such until later than the period covered by this study. Therefore, saying that a skeleton was found in Romania does not really say much about its ethnic or cultural affiliation. It might be local, or it might not be. In itself, this should be the start of an investigation. Furthermore, the Bulgarians were a migratory population coming into Europe around the 7th century AD, thus a century later than these barbarian skulls. Even if the authors actually meant the territory of Bulgaria, the Slavs are starting to settle in the region starting with the 6th century AD, still at the end of the interval covered by the Bavarian skulls. Beyond this anachronistic terminology, one might also raise the question, if the investigated areas have undergone quite significant change since the 5th, 6th centuries, what is the relevance of comparing the medieval genetic data with contemporary populations? Okay, and if in spite of that, the results show a clear genetic link between the two regions, then are the authors making the claim that the subsequent populations movements in the Balkan area did not actually have a marked genetic effect, thus pushing for a reinterpretation of our history of the region? Okay, for these reasons, it seems that the article is combining genetic profiling with some questionable historical conclusions. As puzzling are the phrases presented in the media and attributed to Susan Hackenbeck, nobody thought that marriage and kinship had a really important function in the period, I suspect these have been taken out of context, as otherwise it is quite common knowledge, and definitely part of my own training as a historian, that marriage allegiances were a staple at the time, and that peoples traveled a lot, and mixed cemeteries throughout the area during the 1st centuries AD are a testimony to that. In conclusion, similar to any new science study, this should stir both enthusiasm and a critical reflection. Enthusiasm for how many new questions we can now ask, and also for having new kinds of data that we can integrate into older historical debates, but also a critical attitude towards their limitations and the perils of simplification when using just one kind of data. And I've seen so many articles that just use DNA data to explain things, and it's just not enough. And according to this guy, that's what he believes, it's too overly simplified to just make a sort of, generic or general conclusion about things based on, this one DNA study, based on sort of limited available material. So is it a good one? Probably not. Going back to my former director and his generation, we should always bear in mind that the research we are currently doing is part of a longer intellectual debate from which we might learn valuable lessons. Otherwise, we might end up like Indy, with the results of a cool-looking new technology in his hands, but not really sure how to link it with other human knowledge. Okay, so that's the end of this blog here by this guy who's evidently a Romanian academic in related studies, and actually went to this place with to study with these elongated skulls that he passed in the hallway there, and he knew the fellow who he's doing the research on and everything. So this is what this fellow says. Okay, isn't this what you came here to know about? Okay, yeah, it took a long time. It was a long video. I'm sorry about that. If you don't like it, I guess, go back to watching those YouTube tabloid science videos, okay? And then think you have knowledge where you don't have any, all right? Is that what you really want? Okay, yeah, it takes a long time for me to do my videos, but you're getting a thorough examination of these topics. Isn't that what you really want? Or you want to be like these jugheads who are misinformed, don't understand anything, all right? Nowhere in anywhere of this research do we hear any reference to the Frisian people. Where'd they come from? Out of nowhere. Who are still around today. Okay? The Belbeger people. Well, they're tall, heavy boned, and brachiocephalic. Oh, just like the Frisians? Explain that. Where'd they come from, too? You got any history on them? They just come out of nowhere? Giant people out of nowhere? Come on. They don't know what they're talking about, and I do. I'm trying to tell you that these large people were the ruling class going far into the ancient past, and that's how it ended up. And many average-sized people and tribes and peoples or whatever were, under their rulership. One of the reasons was for protection, not only from other giant humanoids wandering around, probably some, less developed ones, and the giant animal species that are living around, in the early Holocene, and who knows how long they went on for. They're always speculating about that. They find these bones, maybe just 5,000 years ago, for giant sloths and bears and all this kind of stuff. What do they know about the past, really? If it could all fit in a box, it'd be in like one thimbleful in the, what we know, in a corner there. Okay, so, and the Boscopoid people there, what do? Pull their heads out? Maybe the parents were pulling on the skulls and make them round, shape them like clay or something like that, And how do they explain that? Oh, that's naturally occurring, but there was something wrong. They had a medical condition, obviously. Well, obviously, you find all these other ones. Well, what about the Belbeger people and the Adena people? Was that artificial cranial deformation, or does it occur naturally? Okay? They don't know, because they even admitted in this, supposedly cradle boarding, and, they don't know exactly how they did it, and whether it hurts your brain or not. Come on now. So anyway, guys, that's the whole thing there. You get what you want out of it. I'm just telling you, reading you the, tabloid science article that everybody loves to read on YouTube, and then I read you something from a dissenter. That's what you really want to hear, right? Okay, because you're not going to hear any of that anywhere else. So anyway, guys, hope you liked it. Please do hit the like button. Sorry it's so long, but that's how long it takes to get, to understand these topics thoroughly. All right. Anyway, guys, please do hit the like. Please do subscribe. Bugcat7 signing out. Peace.